Hello, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to this final Wicked Problems Wolfpack Solutions live stream. I'm Brian Mallow. I'll be your host. I'm a science comedian, but this is not going to be so much about comedy, much more about science and specifically citizen science. Joining me is Caren Cooper. She's an associate, I was going to say producer, an associate professor of public science in the Forestry and Environmental Resources Department at NC State. Caren.
Hi.
Dr. Cooper, thanks for joining me. And we're going to be talking about citizen science and Crowd the Tap, which is a specific citizen science project that we really want you to know about. But, and I do want to encourage everyone to think about and start sending in questions to the chat. Because if you wait till the end, we won't get to your questions. So we want you to think about them. But the questions that were submitted in advance, a lot of them had to do with birds because Caren's background is in ornithology. But what we really want are questions about citizen science and Crowd the Tap. But tell me something, Caren. So tell me about your background before you got into citizen science. First of all, where did you go to undergrad?
Yeah, good one. Well, first I will point out that I have something in common with everyone who's viewing here, all the incoming class, which is that I got my undergraduate degree here at NC State.
Right.
Although I grew up in Chapel Hill, it's the conflicting.
Is that why you didn't know what to wear? But you knew you were sitting in a Tar Heel red chair, and so you had to wear the Carolina blue.
Exactly. But yeah, so I did my undergrad here at NC State, and yeah, I studied birds while I was here. I studied songbirds in different parts of the country. In Alabama, I studied parrots in Puerto Rico. I studied hawks out in California, and then I did a master's degree at the University of Wyoming, where I studied ducks. And then I did a PhD.
Ducks are just funny.
I know. People chuckle when they think of them. And then I did my PhD at Virginia Tech, but I did my fieldwork overseas in Australia, studying songbirds there.
So, that's something that I love, that I learned about scientists. If you're considering a career in science, so many scientists I know, the nature of the job is as you move to graduate work and postdoc work, that you end up sometimes traveling all over the world.
A lot. Yes, exactly. And I loved that. I loved doing field work for my early career. But then I kind of did settle down, and that's actually what led me to citizen science. And so then I spent about 15 years at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which if anyone is a bird watcher or has family members who are bird watchers, they probably have heard of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology or the Merlin app. Anyway, and there's
a gaggle of ornithologists there.
Right.
A parliament of ornithologists.
Everyone flocks there.
A murder of ornithologists.
Right, the murder of crows. In case people don't know, that's the flock. And and there actually I stopped doing field work and I let everyone else have the pleasure of gathering the data. And really bird watchers across the country share the bird observations that they see, whether it's at their feeder or nesting birds. And that is, my research was based on those data coming in from volunteers.
And that is citizen science, right?
And that is citizen science.
Your ornithology stuff led you right into using citizen science when you didn't even plan it that way.
Right.
Now you've written the book on citizen science. I say that as a joke, but you wrote a book and it's called Citizen Science.
That's right. Yeah. Well, what happened was really as I started to explore citizen science in ornithology, I started looking at other disciplines, and I was seeing citizen science in all those disciplines. In meteorology, in oceanography, in marine biology, even in biochemistry. And microbiology, everything.
Let me cut you off and just ask you, what is citizen science? It's like I can.
In its simplest form, it's really just a collaboration between scientists and members of the public who don't necessarily have any scientific training.
So why would a scientist collaborate with someone with no scientific training?
Yeah, that's a great question because scientists can't be everywhere at once, right? So I was using observations across the country of bluebirds to see patterns in basically in the clutch size, that bluebirds in the north lay larger clutches than bluebirds in the south. Other people have been using citizen science to find with rare observations, right? So others at Cornell were looking for the 9-spotted ladybug, right? They couldn't be everywhere to find it. It took kids everywhere, looking around until finally it was discovered out in Oregon.
So there's a manpower issue of like, you can't be everywhere. You can only gather so much data. You can only have so many grad students gathering data for you.
And not just like spatially, but also over time. I mean, we've known for decades now that songbirds are breeding earlier in the season because of climate change, but that's because there was centuries of data of observations from amateur bird watchers noting when birds were breeding. And so, and then there's also some fields like astronomy and biochemistry actually that just either have like deluges of data that's collected automatically, and algorithms, computer algorithms actually are just never as good as the human brain to process samples, or they have just, computationally intensive puzzles that they need, that people are just better at than computers.
Right. So I know that some of those are like Galaxy Zoo or those protein folding ones, folded are games where just like you said, like the galaxy ones, they have so many images of galaxies. And if they let people look at them and say, is this elliptical or is this?
Yeah, it's like, is it clockwise, counterclockwise? Just simple stuff. Doesn't really take expertise to do, but it takes a lot of time.
Can you trust the data? Like when you're depending on, is there some special, when you're using data collected by non-scientists, are there some special concerns that you have to?
Well, I mean, it is really important that when people contribute in citizen science, that they understand that it's real science, right? Especially if it's in a school context. It's not just another assignment. This is real, it's a real data used for real discoveries.
This isn't just science project, science fair. I mean, science fairs are real too.
Yeah.
But this is usually real.
Yeah, and there's a lot built into that. Like these ones, like you mentioned, Galaxy Zoo, there's a consensus tool behind the scenes.
Right.
So every image, it's not just because one person says, oh, it's clockwise galaxy. It's like 20 people said, oh, it's clockwise. And then we can
they show each one to a lot of people.
Yeah. And, and so to varying extents, there's just different methods like that.
And, astronomy is a field that I just happen to know is like amateurs make contributions to astronomy all the time because so many amateur astronomers are the first ones to spot a comet or a thing because that's just so many more eyes on the skies. And probably in natural,
same
what did you say about monarch butterflies?
Oh, right. Yeah. Monarch. I mean, that's how we know monarch butterflies migrate 4,000 miles from the Midwestern US all the way to Mexico. Scientists didn't figure that out on their own. It was actually teachers and their students putting little postage-sized stickers on monarchs that they would capture, releasing them, and then finally a tagged monarch was found.
So citizen science is real science. It's not just a separate thing. It's a way that you can actually. It's kind of exciting, the idea that you can actually contribute to research that will be published as part of the scientific literature.
Right. And it's research that couldn't happen any other way. Like it's really opening new frontiers because it's things that scientists couldn't do on their own.
So does NC State benefit from citizen science? You're involved in citizen science. There's this big movement. Here we are talking to all these incoming freshmen. Right. And what is NC State benefit from?
For sure. Science? I mean, NC State has a really nice commitment to citizen science. We're the first citizen science campus in the country. There's others following suit. And what that means really is that all the students coming to campus will have opportunities to be involved in citizen science as part of their learning, as part of coursework. They'll have opportunities that are part of service learning, meaning different like volunteer initiatives. And then what it means for faculty and research, the research capacity of the institution, is that then there's a student body that's available and all the public and others who really love NC State who can help contribute to our scientific research projects.
Excellent. And let's give a shout out to SciStarter since we'll be talking about your project and SciStarter. What is this collaboration? What is SciStarter?
Yeah, so SciStarter is the largest hub of citizen science projects. So it's a searchable database of all the projects, whether they're projects hosted by the federal government, state governments, other academic institutions, nonprofits, industry, like whatever. There's a lot of citizen science out there serving a lot of different purposes, different research goals. You can find it all pretty much on SciStarter.org. Yeah. And so we collaborate with SciStarter for our sort of as the cyber infrastructure, like the portal, the gateway for our students to learn about, to have a tutorial, to learn about citizen science, and to so we can direct them to a few projects. Because honestly, there's literally several thousand projects that are listed on SciStarter. It's almost too much. And so we have a special entryway where we pick a few focal projects that we think are good ones to get started with, or that are ones that are NC State focused.
And then, they're really fun too. Like I've been involved in some, like, before we started the stream, we were talking about, I didn't get to do the one where they needed a bunch of people to check their belly buttons to check what kind of bacteria, like the actual ecosystem of microbiome of your belly button. But I did one with where they did the armpits, and another one where they took face mites off my face. This was all at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences to see, just to compare the face mites on my face to the ones people in every other state and other countries.
Yeah, and those are all great.
They're kind of fun. Now, so the project that we're here to talk about, it's kind of fun to be laughing about this. It's a little more serious because it's called Crowd the Tap, and it concerns the possibility of lead in our drinking water.
Right. Yeah.
So tell me, what is this project and how did you get involved in it? And then we're going to actually give you a demo. We're going to point you towards online resources. And this is a project we really want you to take part in. We're asking you to take part.
Yes, everybody received an envelope like this to help them take part. So it's a project funded by the EPA because it's considered one of EPA's national priorities to identify where there's hotspots that might be at risk of lead in water, because they don't want to have another Flint, right? I think a lot of people heard about when there was a lead and water crisis in Flint, Michigan. And the problem is that when a lot of the pipes that deliver water to our homes, when they were put into the ground, a lot of that was before any of these students were born. It was before there was computers. There's really not good records. And there's no one keeping those records as to where they're located. So that's what Crowd the Tap is one of the things that it's trying to do is make people aware of that there are pipes underground, and that's the source of when there is a lead problem. It's not from the water body itself or the source of water, it's from the pipes. If there is a problem.
And there's the pipes that are outside your home coming to your home, and then there's all the pipes within your home. Right.
So it's a very complicated system. Most of it's really hidden. And but it's something that
you literally need the help of people because this stuff, some of it is on like municipal or city or property, and some of it is on private property, right?
Well, yeah, we want we're actually, Crowd the Tap is focused on what's in private homes. I can't go into everyone's cellar and look for that. And so we do ask. So yeah, we're definitely, this project could not happen.
So let's talk about Crowd the Tap. There's more information at crowdthetap.org. And so it's mostly like what we're talking about is two things. One is like looking at your pipes to see what kind of pipes they are.
Well, I'll say when you go to crowdthetap.org, there's a button for reporting data. And on that, it's really 5 simple tabs, 5 steps. And one is just giving consent. It's a big, heavy duty kind of consent thing. And if you're under 18, you also need to have your parents give consent. And in that, you can decide who you want to share the data with. You share it with the research team, you can share it with your utility, share it with EPA, whatnot. Anyway, but then, it's information about your home, like how old is the home, and also demographics of the home, because we really want to know if there's any sort of economic or racial disparities in who has risk of lead in water. Then there's one about the pipes. And that's a really important one about what kind of pipes you have in your home and for your service line. And then there's one about the water itself, like how does it taste? How does it smell? Does it have little floaties in it? Like those kind of things. And then there's the water chemistry. Which we're going to demo
and talk about. And also for more of it, there are some videos.
Oh yeah, Star, an amazing science comedian.
There are some videos on the Crowd the Tap site.
Instructional videos
that are going to walk you through all of that, the form. And then here, so we actually have 2 jars of water so that we can both do this, right? So this the video will explain this as well, but there's a water chemistry test that starts with these strip tests.
Right, that we did for 5. So you want to
we're not just testing for lead here.
Oh, we're not even testing for lead
We're not
at all.
testing for lead.
This is about the chemical properties of water that help us predict and sort of estimate the risk of lead in water. And so that's the challenge here, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, is that not everyone can test their water for lead. It's really expensive, it requires a lab. The off-the-shelf kits are really not accurate, including this one when it comes to lead. And so what we've been doing is building a model where if we know the type of pipes, if you tell us the type of pipes, the type of home, and some simple water chemistry, when we're starting to be able to give a pretty good estimate of whether you should go get your water tested and whether you might have lead.
So the basic idea is here is we dip this, you need a glass of water that's at least as tall as this strip, as all the colored marks on the strip. And then you dip it in for about 5 seconds. And then after the 5 seconds, you just set it aside.
You kind of lay it
for about 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. Now, eventually, like, why don't you go ahead and put yours in there?
Okay.
You're really, like I said, we're going to wait. If you were really doing this, you would wait 60 seconds. Yeah, let's see.
That's good.
And then you put it in this little square. So you'll get this form, and this is a key. And after 60 seconds, these may have changed to some slightly different shades, and you just in each row want to match them to the.
Yeah, you're gonna match it to the closest one, and a lot of times they're going to be low values, so they might not change too much, and some might be hard to match, and that's okay. Just go to the closest.
Do the best.
And so, here I might choose one for most of these so far. Maybe for this one, I'm going to move over a little bit further to column 3. But anyway, you look at the column, and then you come over here to get the value for that row. So if it's column 1, I come over here, and it's a 0. So my alkalinity is 0. And my pH actually is probably, it's not even recording right, but I'm going to have to choose the 6.0. And you go on down the list, matching the colors to the appropriate column, and then coming over to that number and reading it.
Cool. And you'll also, right?
Here's a really key part, is when you take a picture and you want to get that whole box
of the key
and the chemistry strip, and then that you'll upload with all of your other information on the chemistry tab in Crowd the Tap.
And that's after you will have put your name in here, and you will put the values. So, and this is one way that one way that you are sort of like, you're having the citizen scientist do the work, but then you're getting this verification, you're getting their data, you're taking their photo. Are these any different?
Mostly the same.
Were these 2 different sources of water? What were your 2 water sources here?
One was fresh from the tap, and one was a Brita filter.
Oh.
Anyway.
So do we know much about, do Brita filters?
Well, they do
filters like that.
I mean, filters like that do help. With some can help with lead, and they also, they filter out chlorine and some of these things. Yeah.
Excellent. So I wonder if I know we had some questions sent in earlier, and I have a few already. There was one, and I thought we'd ask you one bird question, which is, what bird population has contributed the most amount of evidence towards the effects of climate change in the local community? That's from Jackie. Thank you for the question, Jackie.
Yeah, okay.
Is there a bird population that?
I'm going to give it a tie. But, we know it from a lot of birds have been used in studying climate change, but I would point out 2. In the US, it's tree swallow populations that have been studied across the at least across, a lot of the continent. And then in Europe, it's really the pied flycatcher. And so, those species.
And what is it about it that
you know what it is?
Their changed habits, their changed timing?
Yeah. Well, those 2 species are fairly easy to study because they nest in birdhouses. And so that just right there makes them pretty easy to study. And people have been studying them for so many years, for centuries.
What? Nesting in the top of a tree somewhere?
Out on a limb somewhere. Okay, but a birdhouse that's, the same height as you can just open it up and see what's happening. And so they've been monitored. People have monitored them for so long that's contributed a lot to our understanding of climate change, that birds are breeding earlier, differences in timing of migration, differences in range distributions, all kinds of things.
Yeah. Ryan asks, what is one thing we can do daily to help fight climate change?
Yeah. Okay. So, and that's a really good question. And it is important for people to do what they can to make a difference.
Should we try to exhale less? If we breathe a little less.
I think, I mean, some of the big
Exhale less
things that
CO2.
give us a big carbon footprint are things like air travel.
Yeah.
Things, yeah, but other things can be like living lower on the food web. So like less meat, more plant-based diet can help. So there's things to reduce the carbon footprint. And there's a lot of little calculators out there.
And if you're a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, you could, what could you do on a daily basis?
And more important is probably to pressure for changes, yeah, to a lot of the structures of our economy.
Yeah. Once again, I want to say, like, if you have a new question, we had some questions submitted previously, but if you have any questions regarding citizen science or Crowd the Tap specifically, what else do we need them to know about Crowd the Tap, by the way? We want you to go to crowdthetap.org, watch the instructional videos.
Yeah.
They did get a pack.
Everybody got that. Yeah. And I've seen that there's been several hundred students who have already submitted data to Crowd the Tap, and they've clearly watched the videos because they've done everything really awesome. So thank you.
And it is important. You want to stress that point again, that this isn't just that this is real. This is your research project. I mean, you're asking them to take this seriously. It's not, it can be fun and everything, but
I mean, it's not just my research too. I mean, it's really is for like, our state Department of Environmental Quality is very interested in the data as part of their needs assessment, right? They go to the EPA every few years and they say, hey, these are the needs that we have in this state for replacing, service lines, doing repairs and whatnot. So it really, what we hope is that the patterns that we can see really get put into action. But I do want to emphasize too, it doesn't mean that you have lead, and we want people to report data even if they don't have lead. That is just as important to know who is safe from lead as knowing who's at risk from lead. So we really just want to have as many areas of the state represented as possible.
You want as many data points as possible.
Yeah,
and that means that it's just as important, whatever the result is, it's a data point that you need.
Right.
If you only took all the positive ones, then you wouldn't, then it wouldn't mean anything, right?
It wouldn't be as good. So yeah, you might have plastic pipes and totally safe water. We want to know about that.
I know here's another question from Will. In your experience, what is the wicked problem or motivating incentive that gets the most amount of everyday citizens to take action?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think now like the biggest wicked problem is related to climate change. And I think like in terms of what motivates people to take action, really, a lot of times it varies with age. Like some study, yes, was that too. No, it varies with age. Like people have found like a lot of really young kids get very motivated by when they learn that animals or nature is being affected by climate change, right? Like polar bears or, other like charismatic, fauna. But then as people get older, they tend to get more concerned with other issues, with people being displaced, with national security issues, with economic issues, just more about the sort of the human theme. And actually we've seen that with our students too, because they're kind of transitioning from like being young into being adults, and we see them across that whole spectrum.
Rohan asks, how could we get our hands on more kits for Crowd the Tap? Would we be allowed to distribute them to our friends or family out of state, or would there be any legal issues? Is this just for North Carolina? Yeah,
no, it is national. And anyone that wants more of these kits just needs to write to crowdthetap@ncsu.edu. That's our email. And we will send them. And we can send you a bunch if you want to distribute them. We also have a Crowd the Tap, we call it the Ambassador Program, which is for undergraduate students, and they can get research experience, like credits, academic credit, as undergraduate research experiences being ambassadors. It's particularly good in summer when you're back home, and we just ask people to recruit about a dozen neighbors or people like in a community group that want to do the project, and then help them, like distribute kits and whatnot.
Yeah. And what's the status of this? You've been doing this a little while. Is there anything, like what's the status of the project, or do you have any results or anything yet? Is it too early for that?
It's a little early to have that. We do have the beginnings of a model that predicts risk of lead in water. We are beginning to see what looks like some really unfortunate disparities related to race and economics in terms of who's most at risk in certain counties that are more likely to have sort of this environmental justice problems. And I mean, I guess I'll say an exciting thing that happened in the lab. I mentioned that the off-the-shelf kits are not really that accurate. And in the lab, this is up at Virginia Tech, researchers have developed a very simple little hack that people can do with their drinking water that makes those off-the-shelf kits accurate, right? And so we're actually going to pilot test that this fall with school teachers across the country, because we want to make sure it works in the field. It seems like it works in the lab, works under different conditions, but we need to field test it with real water systems, real world conditions. And then if that becomes the case, if that holds up, then that means that anybody will be able to get a really accurate test as to whether they have lead in water.
Excellent.
So that's an exciting thing on the horizon.
Caren Cooper, thank you very much. And it's Crowd the Tap. Do people want to go to crowdthetap.org?
Yep.
And SciStarter. And this is actually the final week of Wicked Problems, Wolfpack Solutions. And some people may be completing the course now as this ends. So congratulations.
Yeah.
And others working at their own pace.
Right.
We'll finish it soon. So thanks for joining us, Caren Cooper. And does the Wicked Problems Wolfpack Solutions team want to jump in here and wrap things up for us? And thank you very much.